Hello everyone, this is Voices in the Dark. I'm Andrea, and today I have my good friend Zach once again here to talk about Dungeons and Dragons and nerdy things.
I love this. I'm so excited.
And we're going to have a drink, and we're having a non-alcoholic drink because you're allergic.
Yeah, so I'm allergic to alcohol, so I forgot to bring, I was going to bring, but I completely forgot about it because I was running late, a non-alcoholic martini.
Ooh.
But I forgot. So I stepped into the off-license, and they had this non-alcoholic Chardonnay, sparkling Chardonnay by the looks of things, from France, which must have caused the French some problems making non-alcoholic alcohol.
The cognitive dissonance between we want the extra money, but this is not French.
Exactly, it's not French. So, whoa. Oh, there we go.
Let me see if I can grab something.
I've got a handkerchief.
You alright?
Yeah, it's fine. I'm just going to smell of bad alcohol, or non-alcohol now. Let me do that. So how are you?
I'm very good, thank you.
Ooh, it's really
really bubbly.
really bubbly.
Crazy. Is it more bubbly than real wine, I guess?
Yeah. Right, so
Thank you, sir.
you're welcome.
I've been enjoying just kind of getting nerdy with it, as I'm calling it.
Getting nerdy with it. I like it.
Yeah.
Geeking out.
It's something I've noticed that it's becoming sort of almost mainstream to do geeky things a little bit more. Maybe it's a trend started by the Big Bang Theory. I don't know, something like that. Or maybe
Big Bang Theory is I think one of the early catalysts for it. Yeah, for sure. It's sort of become
sort of geek chic.
Geek chic has become. I mean, I remember when you get beaten up for being.
Even suggesting that you might like to read.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I remember the 80s. There was a movie called Revenge of the Nerds.
Yes.
And I think they did like 2 sequels to it. And that was like, that was, for me was like, oh my God, nerds being cool in a movie and not getting cheers, my friend.
Cheers.
Let's see what this tastes like.
I guess it's like a
Sparkling grape juice, basically.
Yeah.
From what I can tell. I remember sidebar, but when I grew up, my parents, my mum and my grandparents, her parents, they had a vegetarian restaurant. It was one of the first vegetarian restaurants in London. And they had sparkling grape juice, and it tastes like that. Okay. So let's bring back memories.
So that ratatouille moment.
Yeah, I've had that ratatouille moment. Like just going back to drinking sparkling grape juice in a vegetarian restaurant in central London 20 years ago. Cough, splutter. Yes. I think Big Bang Theory was probably the progenitor of this period of it.
Yeah, well, the biggest yet mainstream piece of media in which it was mostly shown favorably.
Yeah.
Ish. They still made fun of it every single episode, the quirkiness of it, but it mostly in a good-natured sort of way.
Yeah, and they were the heroes. So they were the hero, the characters. They solved the problems.
Yeah.
Not always well, but they did solve the problems, and that was good. And it made sort of, I suppose that also at the same time that Marvel was releasing all the good, and DC less so, all the comic book shows were coming out.
Yeah.
So that was kind of both of those things. So comic book geekery was being cool, and game geekery was sort of hitting its zeitgeist moment, and I think everything sort of convalesced into that period of time. So where we are now, where being a nerd / geek is it's
almost okay.
it's almost cool. Yeah.
It's kind of interesting, but it's cool because I think there's a moment for basically neurodiversity to have its little bit of pride and exposure. And not just being, because, there's been movements for sexuality or gender or things like that. But funnily enough, thinking differently, it was still seen as a bad thing.
Well, it's still in some places, in some parts of the world, it's still seen as a bad thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's true. I think we're having that sort of death of men have to be me man barbarian style, club, hit someone overhead.
I think I mentioned in the interview I had with my brother that I think it's because being that man isn't anymore the way to be super successful. Being nerdy is.
Exactly. I mean, yeah. You're not conquering armies or taking over the world by military might. You're taking over the world by Facebook and Instagram and TikTok algorithms, and that's intelligence. I mean, though I think being fit and healthy has and being has its place, and but yes.
Well, we're both sort of fond of the concept of the warrior poet, the philosopher king. You kind of have to have both. You're supposed to have both.
You're supposed to have both, exactly. Yeah.
And it's not a new concept. I think was it Plato talking about it already?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And, the 4 seasons of the gentleman from ancient China is that sort of thing. That comes back. But it's like multi-classing really early on, isn't it? When I remember first playing Dungeons and Dragons, you just always wanted to be a fighter magic user.
Okay.
To start with, just because you're like, I get to cast fireball and hack someone to death with a sword. Yes, and you'd always start with a fighter, so you survive the first 3 levels.
Yeah, magic users tend not to do so well at the beginning, but
certainly
they overtake. Once they can change the nature of reality, the guy with the pointy stick is kind of left behind a little bit.
Yeah, and that was always the case. You sort of, I remember, it's less so now. I mean, they've tried to balance it. They've tried to balance it, and the fighter type characters have a bit more. They can attack many times, and they have more power in that sense, and a better close combat. But I remember, you get to a point where just basically, if you're a wizard, oh, that's it. By sort of 8th, 9th, 10th level.
There's a really good Mitchell and Webb skit from when they had their series on television, where there's a superhero duo, and one is the BMX Bandit, and his sidekick, his other counterpart, is the Angel Summoner. And so whenever there's a situation, there's several skits about it, like where they have to intervene or do something. The BMX band is like, okay, so I'll go there and I'll pop a wheelie and I'll disarm him with the back wheel and blah, blah, blah. And then you can come in. And the guy's like, or I could just, summon all my angels. All right, then. He's kind of overshadowed.
Or I just cast polymorph. Or fireball. It's like, oh, okay.
You brought me to this version, at least, of Dungeons and Dragons. I originally gave it a go. I think the bit I got was Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, I think, when I got a copy back when I was a teenager. But I didn't realize that you probably had to get more than one book to play properly. And the one that I had was very limited in telling you what to do. And I had no one that knew how to play the game to play with. So I kind of never took off. But you brought me back to it because you're an avid player and dungeon master.
I am, and now I'm back to being an avid player and dungeon master again. Yeah.
What was it originally like? How did you come to Dungeons and Dragons?
Okay. So the story that's come before this one. Very sick kid. Spent a lot of time reading because, of course, back in those days before the pre-internet era, there's 4 TV channels, and it's 3 TV channels, then 4 TV channels, and radio and books. That was it. VHS was just coming in, and it was bloody expensive, so you couldn't watch. And I was born Star Wars generation, so I was a big geek. Reading, I was books. I think I picked up Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit when I was 10 or 11, read those, and then just became a fantasy book reader first. And then a friend of mine, and I was at early school, so I must have been, so my best school period, I think it was 11, something like 10, 11, maybe 12. There's a guy called Thomas Raphael. And he is now, I think, last I saw about him, he's a barrister, and very, very. He's always very smart. And he got me into board war games. All
right. Little tanks and things.
Little tanks
Napoleon
and things. Yeah. And it was all counters. So it's not like miniatures. It was all
on
old
hexagonal.
On hexagonal counters, right? So he started me on that, and then we got Dungeons and Dragons, and that was it. I think I had the first original red box, then I got the blue box, and then I actually had all of them. So I had the X. So I had the black and the gold books as well. I don't know where they are. I've lost them somewhere along the mists of time, which is a real shame. I think I have the red box still.
It's actually quite fun as a collectible as well.
Oh, yeah.
Because they got cool art and fun stories inside. So
great.
even without playing, it's quite entertaining.
Yeah, and then I got Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, and that was and the geeky nerdy bit of me where it's like all tables and complexity, and you get hirelings and retainers and your staff, and at one point you got a castle. Level, I think it was level 9 or 10. You get a castle, your own keep. Just how the king gives you a castle. Excellent, I like this. So I got, which was now called First Edition, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, Player's Handbook, DMG, Monster Manual. I think I have all those still. I have Deities and Demigods, I think, Fiend Folio. I have all the original Advanced Dungeons and Dragons books. Not every single one, but I got all those. And then I bought loads of modules. So I think I have sort of a huge plethora of original AD&D First Edition modules. I've got Tomb of Horrors, White Plume Mountain, loads of all of them. So that was that, and I played pretty much during my teenage years, pretty consistently. Not internet, so again pre-internet, so you're finding groups. You'd have to go to like the Games Workshop, White Dwarf,
those kind of gamey
stores, Nest, game stores, find people, or you sort of have friends and you
try to convince them.
Do you play Dungeons and Dragons? It's like, shh, shh. Do you play that? Yes. Hey, psst, 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 do you, and then I sort of went to second edition, which I loved, and basically got loads. I've got loads of second edition books, and all the weird expansion books. And that second edition is where they did all the worlds. So that's things like Spelljammer and Dark
different
Sun,
settings.
Different settings, yeah. And then I, got all those, and Forgotten Realms came about, and all the different settings started to come about, and that was fun. And then kind of that was my early 20s. I stopped playing pretty much. Mid to early 20s. Early 20s. It petered out. Partly didn't have time, partly, you sort of other things take over.
I'm guessing women versus nerdy
stuff. No, yeah.
They usually ships in the night.
It was, that was earlier, but I just think, I kind of, you get to a point where it's like, I was a bit bored of it, to be honest.
Okay.
But I kept buying the books. So I bought third edition. I read all third edition. I think I played third edition probably a few times, DM'd it a few times. One of my friends who plays with us, Anthony, he on our homebrew game. So he and I used to play bits. We used to play at odd times. He was a big fan of the Cyberpunk games, Shadowrun, Cyberpunk, that sort of stuff. So we used to play those. I played Vampire the Masquerade when it came out for the first time. I had the first edition book of that. And I played odd games here and there, sort of third edition and 3.5. But I kept buying the books. So I kept buying the books. I bought Eberron World. So I bought the books. Bought fourth edition, hated fourth edition.
Apparently a lot of people did.
Yeah, just really, I was just went, what is this? And I'm trying to figure it out. And then that lost me completely.
Okay.
And then I gave up pretty much. That was the end of that. I mean, I still read fantasy. I still watched what was going on, and bought the fifth edition books and just went, I really want to play this, but I don't know where to find anyone to play this. Then a couple of things happened. So someone introduced me to Critical Role, and I was like, ooh, they're live streaming this. Ooh, this is fun. So I sort of got into it back. I just immersed myself back into it again, and then started playing online campaigns, and then with a company called Roll Dark, who provide professional DMs. So I played with them, and then sort of went, can I do this? Can I be a professional DM with you? They said yes, and so I play with them and GM with them.
Okay.
And then when lockdown happened, I sent a message out to you and a few other of my friends who I know are proper D&D players, and I went, fancy a game just to keep us going?
Something to do.
Something to do?
It was literally the only thing I had to look forward to. That was every week.
Yeah.
The only thing that was constant in my life was this game.
Yeah. So we started on Saturdays, and then we kind of moved. And then we transitioned to Wednesday nights because a couple of people...
things started to open up again, and people had to do real things.
Real things. Yeah, but it's our 20... So last night, I think we played, and it was our 23rd week unbroken.
Crazy.
Yeah, so we've done 23 weeks unbroken.
That's been good fun.
Yeah, it's been good fun.
Do you prefer being a DM or a player?
Depends.
Okay.
It really does depend. I think it depends on the character. So DMing is a lot of fun if the players are a lot of fun. I find that, you know, if the team the players gel and you know, it works, it's a lot of fun. And long-term campaigns, what tends to happen, of course, is there's peaks and troughs.
Yeah.
So players tend to sort of go through peaks and troughs, and as people, you know, other things going on, etc., etc. Whereas playing is just it's fun. You just step into your character and you don't have to think about anything, just what your character does.
Yeah, it's a lot less to prepare or think about.
Prepare, but also you kind of just it's kind of like that it's stepping into something else. So DMing your multi-phasic thinking, you're kind of going, okay, they're doing this, I'm doing that. What happens if they do X, Y, and Z and completely scupper your plan? Because they will. And you know, how do you make them do this without railroading them down this path? You know, and then they do something completely different. You know, it was like the game yesterday where you're spending huge amounts of time where basically your reconnaissance was like one room. You spent hard to reconnaissance a place, and
I tried to tell him last session
one room, and then go, let's go get the army. And I'm just like, it was brilliant. I was like, okay, that's going to be an interesting. But yeah, so you know, and you just as a DM have to figure those things out as you go. I like doing the multiple accents and the characters, and they're all fun. You know, and you get weird minutes like, you know, the goblins and the, you know...
Yeah, just kind of something fun to, like, express. And you can do the voices pretty well. Like, I'm trying my best to learn how to do accents and voices, because it looks like so much fun, but I struggle with that. Like I can hear it in my head, but I try to make my mouth move that way. It just doesn't happen. So I'm gonna practice.
Well, it was like acting. So acting, my trip is where I got taught to do accents. You don't have to be perfect. You can be parody. It's fine. Not to do this, especially to do Dungeons and Dragons. You don't have to be perfect. But it's to find I saw the key phrase.
Yeah, to kind of repeat the...
So the key phrase gets me into it. So I was like, for Scottish, I always start with the Sean Connery. I can change it, but I start with Sean Connery because he's my first Scottish, and it's also tonight we sail into history, and then you can start talking like Sean for ages because it's really simple.
Yeah. The facial expressions help, I've noticed.
Facial expressions help, and also the getting into that. And then when you start doing a few phrases, then you're like, absolutely, as long as the collars and cuffs match. You know, then you get in that, and then it's the whichever phrase you... And I pick famous people just because it's easier to mimic.
Like, I had one character I decided was going to sound like Brian Blessed, and it became so much easier to play when I just imagined his face when he's the king in Blackadder. Just kind of... You know, just putting myself in that kind of position makes the voice come out, you know, pretty well.
Yeah, I also was like, Brian Blessed says, Gordon's alive! Yeah. It's that kind of... Yeah. No, it's fun, and I like doing that. So I like doing that. DM's more stressful because of the prep. And making sure that everything's running, and you know, but I like it. I like both. I like doing.
For me, it appeals to my sort of control freak side of things, like the master of all things. You know, like and let's see this unfold.
And then the players go hand grenade, and you're like, oh damn! Like carefully planned dungeon gone, as they've solved the problem really quickly.
Whereas for playing as a player, what I like, and I want to try and to do it a bit more with my next character, because I think I didn't give them enough of a background or personality to then really kind of go somewhere different. But to be someone different.
Yeah.
It's fun kind of to take your mind, your sort of personality off like a suit and put a new one on and be like, oh, I wouldn't wear this every day, but this is interesting.
Absolutely. I mean, so the character I play currently in the game I play in, so I DM 2 and play 1 at the moment. But one of the characters, so the first character, the first character I played was a tiefling warlock, and she was morally ambiguous,
okay.
and ended up basically running off with her dad, who was a Cambion, a devil,
okay.
To basically run an entryway to hell, because she thought I was more fun than running around adventuring. But she was bonded with the party, so she'd do stuff with the party, even if it was against the devils, because the party were her family, and then
okay.
But that kind of moralistic thing that I like doing, sort of, and giving them a bit more depth and just the alignment change. But it's that kind of she was morally ambiguous, and then now the character I'm now playing, because she ran off halfway through this campaign with her dad, is basically Errol Flynn. So I'm playing him. He's a drunkard. He's really brave. He's not very intelligent, and he's a womanizer, and he seeks his bravery through alcohol. But he's really brave. He does brave things.
Just gotta top up first.
But he's just got to top up first before he goes into combat, and he says just like, right, let's do this, and off you go. So he's a real man, daring do bit, but it's fueled by a bit of booze and mindless sex. That's kind of his attitude about it. But he's a bard, so he's there to he wants to basically big up his own name as well.
Okay.
His famous name.
It's a good trope. It's like and it's fun to. I mean, it's probably a danger to be overly cliched, maybe in some cases, but it's part of the fun to pull the things that you grew up with or that you see in books and films and bring them into something that you can play with. Rescuing the princess, or being the swashbuckler, that is a womanizer and gets himself in trouble, and like all those kinds of little story things that seem to be semi-regularly used, but there's a reason why they are. I think.
Exactly. And it's fun to play sometimes a character that's a standardized trope or
and then bringing your element to it. I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a bit of fun to do, and I like doing that. And sometimes I like playing things that are not me frequently as well. Really not me. So that's fun to do.
That's a really interesting aspect for me that I'd like to kind of see what other people feel about that, because I know what it does for me. But what do you think it gives you to explore people that aren't like you, to be somewhere else?
It's the acting thing. So it's the acting thing. It's like you said, putting on a new set of clothes and going, well, does this fit? Can I do this? What does it feel like to be X? And trying to dig into their raison d'être, their reason to be, and you kind of you got to figure that out. I mean, you can do it for comic effect, and that's fun, but then it needs some more depth than that generally. Yeah. But I played in a one shot. I played a sort of female halfling paladin who was just basically really wise, not very intelligent, incredibly brave, but really sort of lawful good. So she was like, if someone said, "Oh, there's evil there," right? Let's go smite it, because that was her. That's all she, and that's not really me. I'm much more sort of clinically minded and thinking pragmatic.
Well, we could do that, but
yeah, exactly. Whereas she was like, right, kill it. Like, no, turned into a sort of a lawful good murder hobo, but that was nice being on me. And sometimes it's good. I like playing female characters a lot because I like stepping into that.
I think it's a much more clear. It's not me.
Yeah.
That then allows you to explore sides of yourself or things that are just. It's a bit easier to make that jump, I think, when it's very different. When it's too it's kind of like me, but they're a bit more like this and a bit more like that. You can fall back into yourself a bit more easily, I think.
Yeah. And I like changing the and also as a DM I like doing that to change things. So like I haven't done it but in the game I DM on a Monday. I've made dwarves French because I just thought that was so not what they would be.
We've become used to the dwarves are Scottish thing, which wasn't even a Tolkien thing because he imagined their language being more like Hebrew. I think, but an actor somewhere sometime did a Scottish dwarf, and everybody else has been copying him.
Yeah, it's Celtic dwarf thing.
Yeah.
So I've made the dwarves French, which is very good for and it's bad as bad French accent. I apologize, but it's very good for the dwarves are all about them. All right, the dwarves are the best. Right? Like the French, right? Yeah. And that's the way I kind of view them, is like, because dwarven culture is dwarves the best. They make the best beer, they make the best jewelry. The dwarves are the best, and that's French. Right? It's like, but of course, it is the best, you know. Whereas, I think elves are more Germanic because it's it's all about elegance and perfection, and it's elves like it has to be this way. We're into the nature. But it has to be this way and this way only.
Mathematical beauty.
Yes, it is mathematical beauty. It is perfect. Yeah, I just feel like that.
I think that's at least the Germanic elves are part of your homebrew world.
Yeah.
But I think the dwarves are more samurai-like.
The dwarves are more samurai, so they're more Japanese in my world. So they're much more, they're sort of Oriental, very rules orientated. We haven't encountered many dwarves yet.
No. I just at the beginning I thought it was going to be a large dwarf presence because of the mine.
Yeah,
and then we kind of just went off.
You went off down a different path. So it's fun. I love that. It's one of the great thing of D&D where you like, and go, and this is that. Oh no, you're going that way. Okay, right. Randomly do something in the head.
But it's quite good to, I think, because I've been watching. The other thing I started doing is watch Critical Role as well during lockdown because, otherwise, what am I going to do with my life? I finished Netflix and I thought, all right, let's give this a go. And what I like about that game is that Matt Mercer is a wonderful DM, but one of the things he does really well is he just let things play out and gives things real consequences, and he's as neutral an arbiter as he can possibly do.
Yeah.
It's like, you guys want to burn all your bridges and be banned from this town? Okay. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, exactly.
It's probably a lot of work for him, but I guess that's the only thing he does these days. Because I imagine like a DM that only does it like once a week and probably has like an hour to prep doesn't want his players to go off the map. It makes things a bit harder for that.
Well, yeah, I mean, you as players have done it a couple of times, and you just have to roll with it. You literally have to go, okay, right. I mean, I didn't anticipate. So you're one of the characters is a changeling, and I didn't anticipate basically you pretending to be the villain and then just swanning through the whole bad guy's camp just being the villain, and you have to play it out. But and it worked.
We got quite far.
Yeah, you worked. It worked. Yeah. You got quite far until somebody who wanted to kill the villain tried to kill the villain. that was that you weren't anticipating that. But that's as a DM, you just got to go, all right, there's the consequences to your actions, and it's always fun. And that's the kind of fun part about it, where you kind of go, right, I've got to think on my feet. I've got to make something up. So especially when it's very flexible, I don't have rigid structure. So some modules, sometimes I use pre-built modules, but I generally adapt to them. But if anything I create myself, I don't have a rigid structure. I basically have bullet points. These are the kind of encounters, and I let them run. So the campaign I run on a Monday evening for Roll Dark, it's about the Continental Detective Agency, and they investigate stuff. So I can't tell them where they're going to go to investigate.
No.
Right, or who they want to talk to, or whatever they've said. I've set up the world, and I've set up the parameters, and I've set up sort of like Hercule Poirot. I've gone. Here's all the potential villains. here's all the potential suspects. You have to figure out who the potential... I'm not going to tell you who to interview.
Yeah.
So I have to be ready for them to go anywhere and do anything, which is fun. And then I have sort of set, there's encounters which... There's points along the story journey which I have to make them do. And sometimes it doesn't work. And sometimes you kind of go, okay, they've not done that in that episode. Okay, so I'll have to bring that into the next episode. And sometimes players will do stuff that you kind of think, I've given you every opportunity not to do this, and you're still doing it. All right, okay. I've given you like 20 outs to get before you got to this point. Okay, you can, and then they're like, but we nearly died. I'm like, yes. I did think when your party last time was, there was a point where I was just thought, where you were deciding to, what we were referring to as breach and clear rooms. And there's a point where you're just thinking, let's breach and clear this place with 200 enemies who are really powerful. And I'm going, TPK?
That would be the starting point for a new band of adventurers. Like, these guys died. We need
new ones.
Don't do that.
Yeah. But I think you survived. Some intelligence brains prevailed.
There's some interesting back and forth with the planning. And I try not to get, it's kind of been hard sometimes not to get involved in the planning too much, because my character is not meant to be that kind of a character.
Yeah.
It's more of like let's follow orders and
shove steel into things. Yes.
But Andrea is in the back of that character's mind somewhere when he's like, wait.
Stop, no, don't do that.
We are calling the army in when they've asked us to ascertain what's in this base. We've explored one room.
Literally one room.
One room. Like, guys, do you think maybe they'll want to know more than that? Like, no, it'll be fine. I'm like, will it though? I'm gonna try and just let things lie and let it happen.
Exactly. But do you like being a DM?
I do. I really enjoy it, and I guess it's something I've craved since childhood. Being able to be the master of my own world, because the real world I have got little control or power over, and on top of that, because of the way I am, very little of it makes sense. So I've always gravitated towards activities that allowed me to make my own shit. SimCity as a video game, really into that, I played Minecraft when that came out. Reading fantasy books because it was like a world where there was, especially as a kid, when Tolkien's very clear-cut, evil, good.
Yeah.
As you grow older, you get more interested in the more gray lines. But having this is bad, this is good, the fight is clear, this is what we need to... it was interesting, as opposed to the real world where nothing made sense for me. So I was always drawn to fantasy world and making my own, daydreaming. The thing that I got called up about the most in class as a kid was just being like this. I was staring off into space, imagining things.
Imagining things, yeah, absolutely.
So being able to literally create something that then I can bring other people into, because I feel like it's almost a privilege to be able to bring someone into my imagination and have someone play with me.
Yeah.
But also having a little bit of that OCD control that I crave in my life. I'm in charge.
It's me. I'm God. Yeah.
But then having had that, then kind of realizing that it's actually more fun to be a little bit more flexible and opening, it's been opening me up in a way. At the beginning, I was trying to railroad my players exactly to make the story that I thought would be a cool story. And then kind of as I went along, I'm like, no, they're coming up with cool things that I haven't thought of, and it's okay.
Yeah. Which must be like, if there is a god, the gods are going, actually, that's what's really happened. We gave them free will. We gave them free will, and they fucked it. But hey,
it's your world.
we're going up here going, do you really? Oh yeah, you've done that. Okay. And I feel that's the DM. That gods are the god or gods, whatever you believe in, is like a DM going, I wanted you to do. Ooh. Did you just roll a natural one? Oh dear. and that's the I mean, and that's the joy of it, isn't it? That sort of like you never know what's going to happen.
It's exciting and interesting, and yeah, once you learn to roll with those punches and kind of, make it a collaborative storytelling. It's something that kind of is really interesting to me. I don't know how much I mentioned this to my brother. I can't think of yesteryear examples of collaborative storytelling. Storytelling was like someone knows the story and passes it down orally, like, Homer or something like that. I can't think of recorded example. Maybe they happen and we just don't have a record of it. Of someone creating a story that's kind of collaborative and you don't know where it's going to go because other people are kind of influencing it.
Yeah, I mean, that's improv effectively, isn't it? So yeah, improv has been around for a while, but not that long. I don't know when the first instance, I have to look that up, when the first instance of improv was. But yes, collaborative storytelling is not common. It is usually a single author thing. I think there's some cultural collaborative storytelling things. But yeah, I mean, in the modern world, no, it's improv and basically Dungeons and Dragons or role-playing games of any description. I mean,
I like Dungeons and Dragons over improv because of the Dungeon Master. There is an arbiter that decides whether things will work or not. So there is consequences and there's stakes.
Yeah.
Whereas when it's literally free for all, I think it can get very silly very quickly.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that there is that problem. I know that's why whether it's a Dungeons and Dragons or any RPG, I like that there is that structure that makes it work and makes it fun, and the roll of a dice can make you live or die, and
the random aspect is really interesting. Like it's funny because as a child, I was the kind of kid that if he could have maybe gotten away with like fudging his die roll on Monopoly because I didn't it went so badly that I was going to lose if that happened, I might have tried it. But with Dungeons and Dragons, I'm not doing it. I'm not even thinking about it.
No.
It's fun to fail.
Yeah.
It's fun to be like the powerful warrior that goes to behead someone that's completely gagged and bound and miss.
Exactly.
And I'm like, oh, come on. Well, play it off as an embarrassing moment.
Whoops. Yeah, but that's it, isn't it? It's that thing, and that's like that. But that's true life as well. True life happens like that. You pick up something and then suddenly it drops for no reason. And you're like, really, and that's life, isn't it? Yeah. So that's why I like the randomness, because it is life, and keep to the rolls. I mean, the funniest things happen when you roll a natural one. I had a player this week misfire a spell, Firebolt, and rolled a natural one. So I made it hit one of the other players randomly, because it was in darkness and he cast Firebolt and he hadn't rolled a natural one. So I made him roll a dice to see which other player character he hit. Yeah. And then I realised that it would be from behind, so I said, no, he's got a firebolt up your butt. You basically had someone shove a firebolt. And it's just like, and it's like, and the character went, yeah, it was, you purposely picked me. I'm like, no, he rolled the random die. I didn't do anything, I just chose who was.
And it can go the other way as well. I've seen DMs sort of allow a roll for something that should be impossible, because sure, try to convince this elder god to spare you and instead help you. Natural 20. You're like, well, I can't say no now.
What was the least charismatic player, not the character, not the player itself. Player with no charisma, basically convinced one of the guards to let you all through something with a natural 20. I'll try. Okay. Roll your persuasion check.
Yeah.
Natural 20. Oh, God. Right. Yeah. And it is that fun. It's that fun where you just think, as a DM, you're going, all right, okay, we'll let it slide.
It's fun to think of reasons why that might have worked.
Yeah.
And try to narrate it in.
Yeah, absolutely. And things but the other stuff
thinks that for some reason you remind him of his father, and he feels inclined to allow you to.
Exactly. Yeah. He's having a bad day and just waves you through. Yeah. No, it's fun. I love it. I do love it. I think it's I sort of certainly revitalized my, bug for acting and creative stuff.
I feel like I want more practice, but it makes me annoyed that I didn't really take drama at school and try a bit harder at that, because it was just so alien to me. I had one elective semester or bimester, whatever, like a really short period of time where I tried drama, and it was just too confusing and not for me. So
yeah, but also I find drama, it's like anything. It's how it's taught,
right?
Because sidebar. I mean, I was one of the things I lecture in entrepreneurship and there's finance, and no disrespect to the guy who, because it's one guy runs the whole course and he's come up with the finance thing, and the students find it really, really difficult, and they worry about finance. Everyone worry about the finance, and then I teach them where I look at finance, because I'm not a finance guy, but I understand the principles.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key, is if you teach it, if you get people who have learned how to overcome it, then it's fine. But I think if someone just goes, oh, drama, and you do this, and people go, oh, shit, but if you sit there and go, okay, make a funny voice, people go, okay, do Mickey Mouse. Hello! It's that kind of thing. And people go, okay, that's acting. So what I say to everyone is, like, I do this running thing when I teach public speaking. I go, have you ever lied?
Yes.
Right. So everyone's lied, right?
Yeah.
So I go, so you've told me you've lied. Okay. So Laurence Olivier, one of the greatest living actors ever, said, what is acting but lying, and what is good acting but convincing lying? So have you ever told a convincing lie?
Yeah.
Then you're a good actor.
All right.
So, and that's my point, is like, if you can lie, you can act. So
Sure.
So that's the whole point, is that people think it's really complicated. It's not really complicated. We act every day.
I guess we overthink it.
We overthink it. Where it comes into interesting is when we talk back to the D&D, the character that you play is kind of that suit of armor, and it's the feelings and all that sort of stuff that you're trying to represent. So that makes it deeper. But we act all the time. So it's just basically put on a silly voice, put the mannerisms in, and pretend to be that person, and that's acting.
Or even just the fact that we are different people to different people in our lives. The way you talk to your work friends as opposed to your, the way maybe you're like really cutesy with your partner, in a way that if people saw you, people would be like, what's wrong with you? But with it, you're that person. That's acting, because you're not that to your mom or to your boss.
Yeah.
And vice versa. You're not going to be super weirdly professional with your mom. So...
And it's great role play. It's great to understand. Is that it's okay. Walk a mile in the other person's shoes. You understand other people and understand how they think. I mean, as we were talking about a week ago, time, lockdown time means time just goes. We were talking about how Dungeons and Dragons would be great for corporate.
Yeah.
How to teach diversity in a corporate environment. Well, you're an orc, and orcs are not particularly fond of, and and you're an elf, and you don't like orcs, and your grandparents killed his family, and then you start going, oh, okay. And then you start going, okay, that's, and then all right, this is what you have to do, and then also you have the challenged aspect of like, how do you do this?
And I think more people should do it purely for that walking in someone else's shoes, because I think it makes the ball drop.
Yeah.
Because I think most people cannot understand something unless it happens to them.
Yeah.
But the moment, let's say, that they're discriminated against halfling in Goblin Town, they might kind of go, oh, right.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the way to do it. One of the many ways to do it. I think it's.
And that one's a bit on the nose, but like simpler little things, like, you might have, your character might have children or something, and the DM, has the bad guy kidnap them, and suddenly you understand why your mother was so protective when you were little. You're like, oh, I'm so attached to this imaginary child.
Or like your homeland is invaded by a
Right.
via power. Or hang on a sec, we'll do anything to defend it. Do you understand now? It is that thing. I think it's great about understanding and problem solving, and I think there's so much aspects to it which are kind of untapped. I think. I mean, people who play it get it, but people who don't play it don't see it until they play it.
Yeah,
and then they see it, and I think that's really interesting. I think. But what we were saying earlier was about you have to give people, especially in that sort of where you're forcing people to do it, give them characters that are not them, because what tends to happen, I don't know if you didn't do it, but a lot of people will play characters that are them, just heightened versions of themselves to start with.
Yeah,
they think they're the world's greatest fighter, so they'll be a fighter, or
Or at the very least, they create a character which is kind of their mental projection of who they wish they were.
Exactly.
The first character is,
Pretty much that.
how they would like to be.
Yeah.
How they see themselves.
And then they sort of, once you've done that once or twice, it becomes quite boring. So you kind of go, oh, I could do this,
You kind of get it out of your system.
Yeah. Or they see people like so many people want to be. Originally, it was Drizzt Do'Urden, the Dark Elf Ranger, good, and now it's basically all the critical role characters. Everyone wants to be a
match them, like, because they see it, they think that looks fun, that it touched me, like I want to replicate that, and they copy rather than create.
Yeah,
but I think, and I don't know, maybe that's something I've thought about quite a lot, and maybe I'm just biased that way because I hope this is true, which is that true creativity only happens after you've copied lots of other things.
Yeah.
That because I don't feel innate creativity in me until I've done what other people have done first, and then I get ideas. Like I have to have done many things. Trying to be creative when you have almost like no palette to paint from is hard, but the moment you've borrowed other people's colors a bit, and then you can kind of start adding your own stuff. That's what I feel comfortable with. Because I just get complete mind blank when I have to start from scratch.
Yeah, and I think that's true. But that's the old adage: is that nothing new is written, everything is rewritten. And I think that's very true. I think most of the people will tell you, most of the writers or artists, they'll started out copying or being very heavily influenced by a particular artist or a genre or a style, and you can see that. You can see that specifically in directors. For example, Quentin Tarantino. Now, he is a very good director, but basically he took huge elements from Asian cinema for his first couple of movies.
Yeah.
Because that's what his influence was, in the structure of how he did stuff. So it's you can see. I'm not saying it didn't unique in the creativity department, but it was that kind of thing of like, there's his influences. You can see his influences, and you can see what's that, and then he starts to develop his own, unique vision that has that underpinning. We always had a running joke. The movie's a really good, easy example of this. There's a running joke that Kevin Costner directs a movie. There'll always be a sweeping shot of a beautiful vista that ends up on Kevin Costner. And like, if you watch most Kevin Costner directed movies, there is a sweeping shot of a beautiful vista that ends up on Kevin Costner. I mean, Waterworld, Postman, Dances with Wolves.
Yeah. Does Robin Hood have one?
He didn't direct it.
Oh, he didn't direct it. Okay.
Did he direct Waterworld? I can't remember if he directed Waterworld.
But yeah, I think that's what kind of sunk his career for a bit.
That was bad.
He was very adamant about...
Postman was worse, though.
Yeah?
Oh, God, that's evil. It's a bad movie. It's so bad.
I haven't seen that one.
Just don't. Or watch it for the opening sequence where you see the vista and freeze on Kevin Costner. But it's like, certain directors have a particular style, but it's influenced from somewhere else. That was a Western movie style of the 60s. So it's that kind of thing. It's like, there'll always be, I think you're right, there's always influences, and it's building on those influences to get forward. I mean, everyone wants to be an arrow-toting elf.
Yeah, that's, they've watched Lord of the Rings, they've seen Legolas be amazing, and like, I want to Legolas it.
Exactly. you know. Whereas actually my favourite hero in the whole of Lord of the Rings is Samwise Gamgee. Because he doesn't want to be there. No. And the only reason he's there is basically because his friend. And he's actually the one that makes Frodo do everything. And without Samwise, Frodo wouldn't have done it.
No, it would have only gone 3/4 of the way, maybe.
Exactly. So I'm always like, when everyone goes, "Oh, Frodo's the hero," I go, "No. I believe Samwise Gamgee's the hero of Lord of the Rings, in the movies specifically. The books are a little bit different, but yes.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, in the movies, definitely. In the movies, Frodo is way less interesting in the movies.
Oh, he's a wimp in the movies.
Yeah, he's a total dweeb. Whereas, the whole point in the books is that he had a noble spirit.
Yeah.
That's why he was the ring bearer. He took it upon himself to take that burden.
Yeah.
But yeah, most people love Lord of the Rings, the movies. I'm someone that thinks meh. To me, it was... my imagination of it was way better. I think most people were like, this is just how I imagined it. And I'm like, oh, no. I had a better picture in my head. Or like, oh, no, that character was interesting because of this. And they took it out. And
yeah, I think for people who weren't fantasy people, I think Lord of the Rings, the movies are great. I think the extended editions are very good. So the depth of them is better.
They're fantastic in the level of detail, and it is a huge undertaking. Not to shit on Peter Jackson, that was a crazy thing he managed to do. Everyone said it was unfilmable, and he did it.
Yeah, and he made a good effort of it.
But sometimes when the soul or the spirit, at least the way I view that soul spirit of something, gets taken out to make blockbuster sense, that's the part I fell in love with. Little things like the elves are far more Germanic. They're cold and tall and just distant sort of thing. But for Tolkien, the elves were sort of more human than human. They were sadder and happier. They were the merry folk. They sang and made fun of things, even dark things. And that's what I fell in love with, this idea of this kind of sprightly, magical, more of everything than at anything.
Yeah.
And I guess that was too complex an idea, and they became the cold and somewhat distant, boring Germanic folk. But that's not what enthralled me as a child. So little things like that made me think, eh.
But I think also...
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Generally, books are better than film or TV adaptations. Generally. There are exceptions. I find that, especially if you read the book first...
Right, yeah.
You have your picture, you have your imagination, and then, watching someone else's imagination interpret your imagination is weird. Mm. And I think that's true for pretty much anything. I remember us talking about one of our favourite shows, Altered Carbon. And I think both of us read the book afterwards.
Yeah.
And we were disappointed in the book when we talked about it, because we were like, oh, okay, that this seems to be missing from it, and this seems to be missing from it. And then you said you read the second book before you saw the second series. Yeah. And you liked the second book more.
I did, but I feel like it wasn't just the order. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's not the case. But I felt like the first book had some really interesting premises, and there were some interesting things in it that were missed out from the TV series adaptation. That would have been interesting to see in the TV series. But the TV series adaptation focused on a few things that were just kind of surface touched upon, left a little bit to your imagination, and expanded them and made the characters truly compelling, so that you would connect. Wonderful acting in the first series.
Yeah.
And so it enhanced it. It made it really kind of hit home for me. Whereas it almost happened the other way around with the book and the second series. I felt like the second series was made, to capitalize on the first one. I felt like the acting wasn't quite as on point, and it was pretty interesting, but they cut out stuff that was interesting from the book in terms of philosophical questions and character exploration. They made it more about the interactions between the characters and less about what would happen to people in this kind of world, which is what was interesting to me.
Well, it's always that. Yeah, I think I agree. Because the world is really interesting, and that sort of the longevity bit is always really interesting. What happens if you don't die? Effectively, that's the and you could relive every time, and that's a fascinating thing. And they started that on the first series, and they didn't really finish that on the first series. I haven't watched the second series yet, but
they do visit a little bit of it, but not nearly as much as the second and third book do, in a way that's truly interesting. It's not just about living long, but sometimes living at 300 times speed, or because you're in a virtual simulation whilst being tortured, or who are you when you've been in like 100 different bodies, with different friends, and then who are those people still them when you meet someone that you knew 100 years ago?
Yeah,
like those questions are visited better in the second and third book than the second series so far. Not to say that they haven't done it, but it's just there was some really cool stuff in the second and third book
I have to read them. Yeah.
I wish they'd touched upon, but because they kind of the second series kind of shortcuts around the second book, grabs a couple of elements from it and a couple of elements from the third book, and like skips that whole arc, which I think misses out.
Right.
Because the main character's journey from book 1 to book 3 is what kept me reading the books. And they just kind of go, we don't really know what to do with this, it'll be too difficult to shoot, so let's skip ahead.
Yeah. Which is lazy in some ways. No. But it is that interesting philosophical argument. I always like that. It's my always been fascinated by vampires and like immortals, because it's that thing for me is what happens if you had an infinite life? What would happen to you if you had an infinite life? If you didn't die,
what would you become?
And not the blood-sucking bit of vampires, but the immortality bit of the vampires. If you're, but it's like the Highlander thing is like, if you see people, if you know that, you're my friend, and I know that in 70 years you're dead and I'm still alive. Oh, wow. Okay, does that change the nature of the friendship? Yeah, and there's that whole.
Do you become sort of almost numb to relationships because they last so little for you as a percentage?
Yeah.
Or do you treasure them more because how fleeting they are? And I think it depends on the character of the person. I think the longer someone would live without being bogged down by old age, because I think that affects us in normal day-to-day life.
Yeah.
But without that aspect as well, living forever becomes interesting because I think it would reveal your true character.
Absolutely. It's almost like the Groundhog Day thing, as if you had to do the same day over again, as you saw in with the Bill Murray movies. Brilliant for that. It's that kind of thing of you start being a dick, and then you realise, well, actually, oh God, if it's the same day every day, let me try and do things differently.
Yeah.
And try and be a better person, and I think that's if you know it's, which is kind of I know it's a really weird off topic for nerdiness.
That's all right.
But it's always like my argument for universal basic income. I know it sounds a slightly weird thing. Is like, if you don't have to worry about money, what kind of person do you become? And it's true. It reveals your true character.
You might make choices that you wouldn't have made, and suddenly you're the next Beethoven. Or maybe you just raise your children really well, and they're the ones that do like something for humanity.
Yeah.
This whole like life has to make profit month to month. I think is an unhealthy way to bring society up.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's the Star Trek philosophy, isn't it? It's like, if there's no money, what do you do? You explore space, and you have science, and you make the best wine, and there's always going to be issues and problems because people are greedy and people are selfish. But if you eliminate the commerciality of it, well, the whole thing for me, Star Trek is if you can make food out of thin air, you eliminate food, you eliminate hunger, and you eliminate water shortage.
Yeah.
Kind of, what else?
I think much fewer people would be selfish dicks because. When all your basic needs are met, and you don't need to develop aggressive habits to earn basic shit.
Yeah.
You don't then take that baggage, that trauma onto other things, I think. I mean, there's still going to be outliers. You're never going to get rid of them. But I think that as a percentage, I think it's been shown that like poverty and crime are like directly correlated.
Oh, completely.
As poverty increases, crime steeply increases like together. Like because people don't have shit. Well, I'm gonna fucking steal it. Or like so now I'm a thief. Okay, well I have to deal with gangsters. Okay, now I'm a drug lord. Like
yeah, exactly. Well, so it's, and it's finding the motivations, which takes us back to D&D and go and we come full circle.
Very nice.
And it's the motivations, because I always think that the key thing for a DM is good motivations for the villains. It's one of the reasons Strahd in D&D folklore is so famous, because he's a multi-leveled villain.
Yeah.
And I
He
think
has a proper back. He's making decisions based on what's happened to him, and he has goals that he's going to try and achieve. And not all of them are bad goals necessarily, but you're in the way of his goals, so he is your enemy.
yeah, and that's the thing. And I think that's if you have that, you have enemies that are multifaceted in a game, then it makes it better. So I mean, your enemies effectively in my game, are multifaceted.
And it's always kind of, I think, funny. I've seen it a couple of times, and I want to try and include it in my game at some point. Sort of having someone that they have to defeat, but then realizing that it was just a normal person that had like maybe even an honorable goal that they've now disrupted because of their selfish needs as adventurers. And you're like, oh, you killed the guy that was going to, that was the chosen. Basically, you killed Harry Potter. He was the chosen one to defeat the villain.
Oh, whoops.
But he'd stolen this thing. Like, yeah, he needed it to defeat
And there is that element, it's I mean, there's a certain level of murder-hoboness, which you did do spectacularly a couple of sessions ago when you basically butchered a bunch of goblins for no apparent reason.
Yep. Didn't ask questions. They were surrendering -- looking up like what's going on. We assumed that the best thing to do was just
Kill them all.
kill them.
Which I thought was quite amusing. Because you haven't done that as a party generally.
No, mostly no.
No, mostly no. But it was like, oh, okay, right. Surrender your goblins? But it's that kind of thing, isn't it? It's giving something a bit more character to it. Having them got kids and a family, and don't kill me, I've got a family. Oh, don't matter, bang.
It's and then I think that's really because I got a bit of that from watching some things like Breaking Bad. Like, what would I do? Like, 'cause I was fascinated by that by that whole TV series, because it's a wonderful one about like some people overly identify with Walter White in a way that's unhealthy, like because they think, oh, he's the main character, so he's the hero. He's not really the hero. But wouldn't you do a lot of the same things? Would you have the strength of character necessary to be the bad guy in order to give your family what they thought, what you thought they deserved?
Yeah, and that's the key. Yeah.
Right? Like, that's an amazing conflict of a choice that you have to make. That you can do it in one or two ways. I think most people in the real world will rationalize it like, no, I'm still the good guy.
Yeah.
And there are some people that are like, nope, I am the bad guy, but that's okay, because what's important to me is not my own like moral standing or whether or not I can live with myself, but I want to provide for my family. And that's a weirdly evil nobility.
But is it evil? I mean, the Dale Carnegie wrote, and it's one of my favorite things, everyone's a hero in their own story.
Yeah.
And it's that thing of like, it doesn't matter if you're Al Capone, Adolf Hitler, Donald Trump, you, me, it doesn't matter. We are all heroes in our own adventure. And we don't see ourselves ever generally as the villain. Some people do. Some people realise that they're evil and the villain, but it's rare. But most people just think they're the hero, or they're the anti-hero, or they're the, yes, I might be the evil person, but I'm the hero in this adventure.
Right.
And all the good guys are baddies in my world. And I think everyone does view it that way. And I think that comes back to the D&D's understanding that's you by playing different people, you understand that different people have different motivations, and why does the bad guy do that? Why does the villain do that? Why does the maybe it's providing for their family. Maybe it's the fact that they're escaping their childhood. Maybe it's the fact that they need to do X, Y, and Z. And you put people into a corner, people will do stuff. It's very rare that most people won't do something illegal or dangerous or things if you put them in the right amount of pressure on them. It's normal.
Yeah.
Psychological human behavior. So the simplisticness sometimes of D&D is bad guys are goblins or hobgoblins.
It can be played that way.
It can be
it's sort of like a board game with fantasy board. It becomes a fantasy board game kind of thing.
Yeah, but then the trick is a DM is to actually kind of make it a little bit more like, oh, okay, we shouldn't have done that. It's like when I'm going back to the goblins, and I put a young goblin in that you didn't kill, whose mum you did kill.
I was gonna ask you about that. I wasn't sure if I killed his mom or his mom was fine somewhere at work. So one of the ones that we killed was the mom.
Yeah.
Okay, I gotta look after that little goblin.
But that's my point. It's like because I put that there, and you didn't kill him, and I made him like all sweet and innocent and young. Because I wanted you to go, you just murdered a bunch of people for no apparent reason. They were surrendering. They were basically earning a keep.
Yeah.
They hadn't attacked you. They hadn't done anything.
I just went. I don't think I started it.
No, you didn't die.
But once shit went down, my character is.
Yeah, but that's character. So the character is military and does it. But that's my point. Is that everyone's the hero. They think, okay, I'll do this. Yeah.
Good fun.
I like it, but that's
I was a couple of times I've been meaning to ask you, and then I was like, no, I'd rather think about it like as his mom is fine. She was on the upper floor.
That's what he thought. Yeah. Did we kill your mum? Yeah, you did. Oh dear. But I like that, and I like the fact that that your party is quite morally ambiguous apart from two characters.
Yeah.
There's two characters that are relatively good. Everyone else, morals. I think my favourite one was the first. I think it was like the second session we had, third session,
the leg cutting one.
The leg cutting one, which was just brilliant. I was just like, okay, so this is the tenor of the party. Yeah, where
he poisoned himself, and we no, you're not dying yet.
Chop the leg off. Stop the poison, chop the leg off, cauterize the wound. And I'm sitting there as DM going, okay, you're not going to let him die, but you're going to make him legless.
Saved his life.
Well, for 24 hours?
Yeah, it didn't last. We still don't really know who took care of that.
I'm not telling you. If you haven't figured it out yet.
No. And there's a few dodgy characters in town that could be at least linked, but we still have no idea why.
Well, it's going to be your base of operations for the time being, so that it can't just be one bad dodgy character.
No.
And also, as I said, motivations are there. I'm not.
Something fun that I noticed. I don't know how many people do this in their games, but watching Critical Role is that they created more extensive backstories to their character than I did. Way more detail, but also leaving things blank for the dungeon master to fill in. And both them and the dungeon master are invested in making sure the character has character development.
Yeah.
So one character is a loner that doesn't trust anyone, but slowly over the time, his life gets saved. And he warms up to people, and then they become his family. And you can see that transition and growth as a person, and that's really, really interesting. And I feel like it's something I want to explore.
Yeah, I'm starting to try and do it now with you guys, because the group sort of coalesced now.
Yeah.
So I'll start to bring more and more external things in.
So yeah, I might need to help to flesh out my character's backstory so that then he has somewhere to go from.
Yeah, but I mean, I think yeah, there is necessary for that. But I can see most of people's characters and what they're, and then I can just add bits in. The only one I haven't got much from is Anthony's elf Revan, but I can. I'll chase him. But most of everyone else of you, I've got ideas about where to push, and start doing the things like as is common in long running TV shows, is like, oh, and here's your long lost commander from your military days, and he's come to ask you a favor, and then you're like, and it's a favor that's going to put you at a lot of risk, but you owe him your life, and it's all those kind of things will start to drop in. Well, I wanted to get to a point where you guys were comfortable. Now at that point where I've kind of gone, okay, right, we're
cool. I'm looking forward to that because it's exciting as a concept. Yeah,
because they do it quite well in Critical Role, and also they generally have one person's.
They focus on one at a time usually. Sometimes there's an interlinkage between two.
Yeah,
but you rarely more than that.
Yeah.
But then, it's quite interesting as well when, like, let's say the commander is the guy that killed the other character's parents or something, and there's a conflict there.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, there's, and it's starting to drop that in, like gladiatorial arena in the Saugin thing. For I mean, that's there already, but I was like, okay, Iriak recognizes it and stuff like that, and that if we keep going, there is a bit where I will I've got an idea for his character because he's a Goliath monk. Character, but anyway, so I'm talking to the audience who have no idea what we're talking about. But there we go. But yeah, so that kind of thing. But it's fun. I like it. I like developing the characters. I like developing the plots, and sometimes it's just fun to, as you lovingly refer to it, breach and clear. Breach and clear. Let's go kill the room. You're like, oh, okay, and then almost die. You've only had that a little bit.
Yeah, there was when we fought the ogre Mage, that could have gone badly. We were very lucky. He didn't really get a chance to do more than use his cold breath on us, and that nearly killed 2 characters.
That nearly killed 2 characters, yeah. You were really lucky.
Yeah, I think he had bad initiative, and we got some good rolls in. And because the other thing is, I'd come across that monster in Critical Role and seen it absolutely obliterate them and permanently kill one of their characters. And I was like, danger will run. So I burnt all my actions and things trying to kill this thing. It was hard not to. I guess I should have roleplayed it. I don't know what this is, but I was like, not danger.
Yeah, and then the werewolves, they were coming in. So, and because you did so much damage to him quite early, when the werewolves came in, you actually had capacity to deal with them. Because otherwise, if you were kind of down and out at that point.
Yeah, they could have finished us off easily.
Yeah, it was quite. There was a moment of touch and go, and then also the battle. If there'd been more people in the battle with the Marquesa and
yes, and her bodyguard, blind bodyguard guy.
Yeah,
terrifying guy.
Yeah, he did have huge. I mean, he had 200 hit points, and he could redig his hit points.
Yeah.
And that I was like basically you're going hack, he's not dead, hack, he's not dead. He's not dying. But yes, no, it was. But I like all that about D&D. And character death is it's better if it's later, because it means that you've invested into the character, and so you don't want to die.
Yeah.
So you'll try not to die as a character,
Yeah, if it's really early on, be like, oh, I barely did anything. You're not emotionally attached to that.
Yeah, but because even Andy, who's quite emotionally disattached to things generally, and that, you know, he likes the game. But even when he was down, he was like, oh, no, I don't want to be down. I don't want to die. He's going to have another character. Oh, no. But yeah, I think it's fun. But it'd be interesting to see. Interesting where this Dungeons and Dragons new resurgence goes.
Continues or whether it peters out.
I think it will continue for a while. I think as we said, nerd geek culture is quite solidified in the public consciousness.
I think it's got lots of potential, especially for entertainment value. Like, people will play themselves, and that could go in and out of fashion a little bit. There might be other games that take over as well, you know. But because celebrities are playing, I think it's going to have a little bit of a heyday.
Yeah.
But if more shows like Critical Role, which are collaborative storytelling for entertainment of others, it's like a nerd's version of football.
Yeah.
You're watching someone else that is really good at it.
Yes.
Which is inspiring, it's interesting, it's entertaining. I think if more of that pops up, it could become a big thing.
Oh, I agree. I think the issue is, and I think we've had this conversation before, is that it's got to be people that are good at it. I think your analogy is correct. I think it's got to be people that are good at it. You know, the one of the things Critical Role is what makes it so good is they're all professional voice actors.
And I mean, their voices, like in the way they use them, are really good, but they're also invested. They're doing it for fun. They like each other, and they're giving it their best go.
Yeah.
It's not half-assed.
No.
It's not ironically playing, like, oh yeah, playing Dungeons and Dragons. They're, you know, I don't know how to explain it, but it's taking something seriously makes such a difference.
Yeah, they're professional players, effectively.
Yeah.
And take your analogy of a sport. I mean, it is like watching good sports people play.
Yeah.
The problem I see is a lot of other people who are doing the live streams and so on and so forth are not professionals. It's like watching Sunday League football.
Yeah.
Not that I watch football, but you know what I mean. Is
that kind of, like, no one's gonna watch the parochial game, like.
Yeah, no one's gonna watch Colchester Colchester Knights Sunday League game versus, they're not going to do that. Whereas, if you want to watch Chelsea versus Man U, you're going to watch Chelsea versus Man U. I hate football.
Yeah. I know those are teams.
That's basically why I was lost the Sunday League game teams. Colchester. It was the first city that came into my head. But I think that's the case. I think that's where it becomes interesting, is if those shows become more prevalent, and you've seen it a bit. I can never pronounce his name. Joe Manganiello. And Deborah Ann Wolfe and Matthew Lillard, and these are all, again, like the Critical Role guys. These are really good actors doing this. Yeah. And I think that's, as you say, if you get 3 or 4 or 5 more of these shows, then I think it'll become a pretty staple thing and keep going. But geekdom's here to stay. I think that's the one thing. I don't know if we've had this conversation. I'm pretty sure we have. But I always say that everyone's complaining about superhero movies and go, oh, there's too many superhero movies. And I go, well, yeah, but think of it like the Westerns. So the Westerns were there from the 1930s pretty much to the 1970s. It was the 80s.
Pretty solid.
They only went out of fashion in the 70s when it became sort of gangster and sort of hard, really good, dark, gritty, gangstery movies. And then Westerns sort of changed, and then there was a couple of big ones in the 80s, and then really the Westerns kind of died a death now. There's no Westerns. But superheroes are like the modern Westerns. They're heroes and villains, and there's some, and then that's the basic ones, and then they start to blur the heroes and blur the villains. Yeah. It's Westerns. Yeah. And the Westerns lasted for 60 years as a movie genre. Superheroes aren't going to go away because they're really good and they're easy to write and they're easy to communicate the key concepts like a Western. So I think that I think we're here. The superheroes are here to stay, and if that's the case, geeks are here to stay. In that case, geek and nerd culture is here to stay.
Yeah.
And you see that on and especially things like Netflix and Amazon Prime. The TV shows that are doing well are if not comic book based, at least comic book related.
Yeah, fantasy, sci-fi, superhero. It's the ones that are leaning on the most. Like I never thought like, and it's kind of pissed me off a little bit when I saw that someone finally did it when Apple decided to do the Foundation.
Oh yeah.
So the two things that sort of the fantasy series was Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, that shaped me as a child. The sci-fi series was the Foundation. And, I wrote the Asimov stuff. And I was like, someday maybe I'll make that. I think it's too challenging for people to make. No one's making it. It's been like 50 years since it's been here. And then they've decided to make it. I'm like, oh. And I was both upset that someone else did it before I could. And also upset that they might ruin it. But I saw the trailer, and I guess they changed a few things to make it more cinematic. But I wasn't put off.
I haven't watched the trailer yet. Is it good?
It's exciting. It's like this might be really cool.
Okay.
Please.
Yeah. Sometimes it's like I watched the trailer for Tenant, the Christopher Nolan.
Yeah, Tenant.
A tenant. So it's a belief. So a tenant. I watched Tenant, and I was like, basically, this is Memento with guns. This is your first movie you're doing over as a Bond movie. Okay. Not so impressed. I mean, I do like him. I think he's a very good cinematic director. But, he's kind of... I mean, not disparaging to him. I think he's a very good director. But he's kind of got that mythical... or anything he does is fantastic status.
Maybe not. Well, we'll start... Like, I want to see it. But something I've noticed is that a lot of artists only really have one idea.
Yeah.
And once they've told the perfect version of it, the perfect painting, the perfect movie that truly says, this is what I'm trying to say. And I'm like, I understand. Anything after that is unnecessary. But obviously, they might be 2/3 of their way through their career life. They still got to make movies or paintings or whatever. But after you've already created the best thing you could, where do you go from there?
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I find... Yeah, I agree with you.
It's always out of sequence, memory, time.
Yeah,
for Nolan.
For Nolan, yeah, absolutely. And also, quite dark. He likes his dark characters. But yeah, but I think I agree with you. But sometimes the one-trick pony, effectively, I'm not saying they're one-trick ponies, but, do consistently good movies. So if you look at, Guillermo del Toro, who I think Pan's Labyrinth is a brilliant movie. I think the original Hellboy is a brilliant movie. I think Shape of Water is an amazingly brilliant movie. And what the difference is they're the same idea and the concept of the world. He's just telling different emotional notes in that world.
Right.
So
and some I agree. It's just that I think it's a funny thing. I wish I was that talented. I don't think I have anything that I spent enough time in to be specifically good enough like that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I see that sort of, it's almost like a prison of an idea that ties an artist to something. And sometimes they're able to break free from it, or sometimes it doesn't matter. They're telling a different version of the same things because it's so perfect in its own special way. But other times they kind of go like this, and then there's nowhere to go.
Oh no, I think that's very true. I think actors suffer from that a lot. So actors get typecast into a role, and then they get stuck in that role, and it's very hard for them to break out. So, two really good examples of that. Both they did it reversed way. So, Bruce Willis was predominantly a TV actor. And he did a lot of comedy, light-hearted roles. So his original role TV was Moonlighting, where he played sort of a comic detective, kind of guy. And there was a Will They, Won't They with Sybil Shepherd. And then he did a couple of movies where it's on that. He was the comic geeky guy. And then his breakout movie where he became a big success was Die Hard, where he became the action hero. He had sort of the laconic comments, but he became an action hero. But before that, he was a comedy guy. Which is Tom Hanks as well. Tom Hanks was a really comedic guy.
Yeah.
Before he broke into the serious movie, sort of, Big was his last comic movie, and then he kind of went into
And that had notes of drama in it.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
But and also, like, if you look at Arnold Schwarzenegger, so Arnold Schwarzenegger was the first bunch of movies were all basically me, I have muscles, I beat people up, and then it was Twins and Kindergarten Cop, where you kind of realised actually he's really funny. He's very good at making fun of himself, and he understands what he does. And I think the epitome of that in modern era is like Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, because he's very good at basically playing, action heroes and comedy. What I'd like to see him do is very serious.
Yeah.
Because he's not done that kind of role.
Because he started in the post-Arnie era where it was okay and it made sense not to take yourself seriously as an action hero. So even the ones where he's more serious as an action hero, he's still kind of raising an eyebrow to the audience.
Yeah.
I don't think he's ever done properly serious.
Yeah, and I'd like to see him do that because I think he's a talented guy. I think he's very talented.
And he puts in the time. He's got that sort of hunger for that sort of obsession of trying to make sure that, because life is meaningful, that means he puts in the work.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's a bunch of actors that are like that now. I think there's quite a few actors that are like that now. They actually put the work in. They're not, they're trying to do stuff and the problem is a lot of producers and a lot of companies won't let them do the stuff.
A friend of mine in the movie industry told me that they now have an algorithm that they feed the movie details into, and the producer or the production house will literally go, I'll tell you what, add a cameo from Bruce Willis and change this character to someone that's Asian. And then you got yourself a deal. Because the math will tell them that will get enough of a box office in all the countries they're planning to, that it will be profitable. It won't necessarily be better as a movie.
Yeah.
But it's done by math. And I was like, that's insane.
Well, it's not. Because I remember when I was doing movies that I could, if you gave me the director, the cast, and the log line of a movie, I could generally tell you what the opening box office in the US would be.
But a system like that, and anything that uses an algorithm, will reduce the artistry because it will only ever recreate what's existed before.
Yeah. But when you used to pitch movies, and this is true before, you had to go in and pitch, and when you used to pitch, you had to give examples of movies that were similar, that had done good box office before.
Yeah, so like, this is like James Bond in space.
Yeah, and James Bond movies have done X number of box office, so it kills it. And I remember when I was a movie producer, and there was a really lovely movie. It was really well scripted, and had some great cast attached to it, like proper A-list cast. And I went, it's going to cost X million to make, and it will never make its money back. It might get into Oscar territory, might.
Okay.
But it will, as a commercial entity,
will not make its money back.
Will never make its money back because it was about a disabled kid and da-da-da. And I go, I get it. It's very worthy, but people don't pay money unless they're in a very small demographic to go to the cinema to see a disabled kid become a hero. It's not generally, become a more functioning person. And I think that's wrong, personally, but the commerciality of it dictates that that's not going to happen. And it's when art is commercial that comes down. What's really interesting now, and we've had this conversation, is because the cost of making content is just basically crashed. I mean, audio content's completely gone, pretty much. You can make an album for...
Yeah, like the microphones I bought was $3 for $30, and they were comparable to the industry standard microphone for like singing on stage.
Yeah,
and that was just for me when I was starting out doing podcasts. I didn't want to spend too much money.
Yeah, so I mean, you can spend more money, of course, on the extra equipment, but the cost of if you think to do this 20 years ago would have cost you probably something like $30,000 to $40,000 to do this show. Yeah. And that's not just the equipment. That's
just
the editing, the shooting, the have crew, because you couldn't have cameras without crew. you've done this all on your own, effectively. You take the camera, it's cost you a couple £100. I mean, without the equipment.
Not counting the equipment, this is, it cost me my time.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it.
To edit it, the time to edit, and that's it. It's nothing. The cost of construction. So I think that as this drops even further, and the question is the distribution channels, but you'll get to see more interesting content, not CGI content, because that cost will come down.
Yeah.
And then there'll be some algorithm that help you do the CGI, and that will help you do this. It'll drop and drop and drop until you can. I mean, if you look at all the fan-made trailers,
yeah,
of people doing stuff like that, we'll get there, and then you'll have more interesting content because people can deliver it.
Yeah.
The problem, therefore, is then what's the value of said content?
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's a conversation for further down the line. So let's finish this off. Otherwise,
let's finish it off.
At least you're not as drunk as you were last time. You did
No,
this.
well, I'm not. It'll be hard, I think. Is it one of those ones that has like a 0.5%?
I know. I think it's actually 0.0.
0.0. So it would be very hard to get drunk with this.
It is 0.0. I think it's 0. So you I can't remember where it is. So different countries have different rules. So certain countries, because I had to look this up, certain countries have, if you say it's alcohol free, it has to be 0.0. Certain countries you can have it below 0.5, but that's it. You can't call it alcohol free if it's above 0.5. That's the you can call it low alcohol if it's below.
Russia, they've only recently changed it. It was basically anything higher than a beer was alcohol, but a beer was a soft drink. So kids could go and buy like a 5% beer because it's not alcohol, it's only 5%.
That's Russia for you. This is Russia. Russia is very good.
But it's recently changed. So.
I like this. Russia is you drink beer as baby, vodka as adult. This is good. Да, очень хорошо.
Well, thank you very much for sharing your time. I have no idea how long we've gone for. I forgot to check the time before we started.
Well, I have no idea either. Probably really, really long, and then people are going to be going, "Oh my god."
That's all right. I think long form conversation is fun. Like trying to keep to an artificial time with a set number of questions. I think it robs it of the artistry. I think the greatest thing about podcasty video is that you just let it go wherever it goes. Kind of like D&D. You see what happens, and maybe you change direction, and if it's interesting, why not?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think what originally drew me to podcasts was that I could join in on a conversation that I would have loved to have had. I just didn't have someone to have it with.
I agree. I think that's brilliant. I think that's way forward, and I truly agree. I think people curtail stuff too much. I mean, yes, 20 minutes, is more bite-sizable, but come back to D&D Critical Role is 4.5 hours a show, and people watch that all the way through, listen to that all the way through.
I'm now on episode 75, so...
Of season 1 or season 2?
Season 2. I started on season 2.
Okay. I haven't done season 2. I watched 2 episodes of season 2. I watched it, but I've listened to almost all of season 1.
Okay.
I kind of got to...
Highly recommend it. It's amazing.
Oh no, it's brilliant. I think they are brilliant. I love the real actors. I love some of them as well very much. I think there's some very interesting, talented people in that, and the characters are good. And I did watch the first couple of episodes of season 2 of Critical Role, campaign 2, and I love the fact that I can't remember which character was going, and he goes, "Oh damn, I've made a rod for my back. I've got to do this accent for another 2 years." It's just like, sometimes you got to think about these things, because I've done that myself, where I've gone, "Oh bollocks, I've got to do an accent like that for for how long this campaign is going to last." So yes, you're good, but people watch. I think if they're interested, they'll watch. If they weren't interested, they're not going to watch, and then you're going to lose them anyway. So it doesn't make any difference.
I'm doing this more for me.
Yeah,
I thought I wanted to have conversations about nerdy stuff because that's what I like.
I like it too.
Other people want to watch it. That's cool.
Exactly. And nerdy stuff and drinking. I like the thing.
Yeah.
You see, I was ashamed because we're not in the studio, so we can't smoke. But I would say, nerdy stuff.
I would have allowed it if it wasn't that my studio is inside my sister's place.
Yeah, exactly. So. It's probably not wise.
She wouldn't like it.
She wouldn't like it. No, exactly. Well, we'll go out and smoke now. So, who's next on the?
If he's available, I'm gonna have John, my partner in doing Voices in the Dark stuff, coming on to talk to me about The Expanse, which is a TV series and book series.
Book series, yeah.
He's read the books. He's all caught up, which is I think 1 or 2 books beyond the TV series. I've only watched the TV series, but he tried to make me watch it for like months before I finally relented. And it took me until season 2 to fall in love with it. Season 1 was okay, but I was a bit frustrated with the characters. But he's really, really into it, and I just want to know why he likes it, why it's made an impact in his life, and what about it.
Okay, cool.
Just let someone talk about something they love and explain why it's cool.
Oh, I could talk about lots of things I love and why it's cool. Yeah.
We'll have you back on.
Yeah. D&D's just one of them. Oh, yeah. But we've had long conversations about different TV shows and stuff for coolness. We were doing it at the end of our game the other day.
Yeah.
But that's always fun. I like that. And I love the social aspect of D&D. A bunch of people I've never met before become friends.
Yeah.
And that's the cool bit.
Yeah, because most of the time friendship is about going through things together. And even though it didn't really happen, it feels like it did.
Yeah, exactly.
We've been pirates and we've, escaped life or death situations. Not really, but yes, we did.
Yeah, we did. And encountered flying sharks.
Yeah.
I might have small flying sharks. It might be Sharknado.
That's a 10th level spell, right?
10th level spell. 10th level Sharknado spell, yeah. Exactly.
Amazing.
Flying sharks in circular
I look forward to it. Well, thanks again for coming on.
Pleasure.
We'll have you on for some other stuff in the future.
Oh, yeah. Always happy, mate. You know me. Always happy to talk shit.
It's fun.
It is fun. And I like your t-shirt. I'm doing that on camera. I'm jealous. I might have to get one. No, I don't wear t-shirts very often. It's not my
I like the rainbow as a symbol of general diversity. I'm seeing more and more like diversity flags that are specific, and I'm like bisexual flags, and I'm like, you didn't feel covered by a rainbow. That's the point. Is that's a spectrum of everything.
It's like I'm being not politically incorrect, but it's just like when it was originally it was like LBGT, or LBG, then it was LBGT. There was LBG, and then LBGT, then LBGTQ, then it's LBGTQI. I'm like, just put the alphabet. If you're going to do it, just cover it.
We'll just come up with a new letter that D for diversity. Done. There's nothing that doesn't fit under diversity.
Exactly. But yeah, as you say, a rainbow covers everything. Don't need to.
I feel covered by the rainbow, even though I don't see myself as any of those particular letters.
Yeah.
I feel covered by the rainbow both in my sexuality, gender, and general outlook in life because it's a rainbow. Yeah. I'm inside. Sometimes I'm this color, sometimes I'm that color, sometimes I'm all of them.
Exactly, and people need to be okay with that. Generally, we don't. There's a non-politically correct conversation for another time.
We can have that on another.
Yeah, another time. Drake, always a pleasure, my friend.
Definitely.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
Cheers, ladies and gentlemen.
Cheers.
If you like sparkling grape juice that doesn't taste like wine at all, go for it. Actually, the martini I should have brought you would have liked.
Okay. Well, next time.
Yeah.